For most of medical history, aging has been treated as an inevitability rather than a condition, something you're supposed to accept, like traffic or in-laws. You get old, things break down, and your doctor's job is to manage the individual breakdowns one at a time. A pill for the blood pressure, a pill for the cholesterol, a knee replacement when the cartilage finally gives up. Nobody's treating the actual process driving all of it. That's like sending a mechanic to fix your check engine light for the 40th time without ever asking why the engine keeps overheating. Geroscience flips that model on its head. Instead of playing whack-a-mole with individual diseases of aging heart disease, arthritis, dementia, type 2 diabetes, Geroscience asks a more useful question. What if we target the aging process itself, the shared biological mechanisms underlying nearly all of these conditions, slow the aging process, and you don't just add years, you compress the period of decline at the end. That's the real prize here, and it's no longer science fiction. It's happening in labs, clinics, and increasingly in progressive longevity practices right now, while conventional medicine is still arguing about whether aging even counts as a treatable condition. Spoiler, the FDA still doesn't officially recognize aging as a disease, which tells you everything you need to know about how slowly the bureaucratic machinery moves compared to the actual science. Geroscience is built around a set of biological hallmarks of aging, things like genomic instability, telomere attrition, epigenetic drift, loss of protein regulation, cellular senescence, mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell exhaustion, and chronic low-grade inflammation. That's a mouthful, and conventional medicine loves to hide behind the complexity of it as an excuse for inaction. But strip away the jargon, and it maps almost perfectly onto the framework I've used for years with patients, the Wolverine Healing Protocol and its 5 M's: microvascular health, mitochondrial health, metabolic balance, metabolic reserve including muscle, and membrane health. You don't need a PhD in cellular biology to understand that if you fix the terrain, the plant grows better. Geroscience is just modern academia catching up to what functional and progressive practitioners have been implementing for years. Microvascular health ties directly to declining vascular integrity with age, dollars, a major driver of everything from cognitive decline to erectile dysfunction to poor wound healing. Rejuvenation therapies targeting angiogenesis and endothelial repair are directly addressing this hallmark. Mitochondrial health is essentially a headline hallmark of aging on its own. Interventions like NAD+, and possibly NAD+ precursors like NMN and NR, mitochondrial peptides, EWOT, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy all circle back to restoring the cellular power grid that keeps every other system running. Metabolic balance connects to the insulin/IGF-1 signaling pathway, one of the most well-established aging axes in all of biology. This is exactly why drugs like metformin and rapamycin, originally developed for entirely different purposes, have become darlings of the longevity community. They intersect with nutrient-sensing pathways that regulate the pace of aging itself. Metabolic reserve, including muscle, maps onto stem cell exhaustion and the loss of regenerative capacity. Sarcopenia isn't just cosmetic decline, it's a marker of dwindling metabolic reserve, and it's one of the strongest predictors of all-cause mortality in older adults, arguably stronger than most lab values your doctor actually orders. Membrane health relates to the structural integrity of every cell in your body, and it's chronically ignored in conventional care because there's no simple blood test for how flexible are your cell membranes. Rejuvenation approaches that focus on phospholipid restoration and reducing membrane rigidity are doing quiet, underappreciated work here. Let's go through what's actually on the table, because the field is a mix of legitimately promising science and expensive nonsense marketed to people with more money than patients. Senolytics, compounds designed to selectively clear senescent zombie cells that accumulate with age and pump out inflammatory signals, represent one of the more compelling avenues in the field. The concept is elegant. Instead of trying to reverse aging everywhere at once, you clear out the cells that are actively sabotaging the tissue around them. Early human data is promising, though we're still in relatively early innings. NAD plus boosting protocols address the well-documented decline in cellular NAD plus levels with age, which cripples mitochondrial function and DNA repair capacity. IV NAD plus therapy has become trendy, sometimes for good reason, and sometimes because it makes for a good Instagram post. Oral precursors are cheaper, more sustainable, and for most people, a more sensible starting point than an IV drip that costs as much as a car payment. Rapamycin, an old transplant rejection drug now being explored at low intermittent longevity doses, targets the mTOR pathway, one of the most conserved aging mechanisms across species from yeast to mammals. It's one of the more scientifically defensible off-label longevity interventions currently being used, despite conventional medicine's discomfort with prescribing a drug outside its original indication. Funny how that discomfort tends to evaporate the moment a drug is being prescribed for a profitable on-label condition instead. Peptide therapies, things like BPC-157, thymosin alpha-1, and various growth hormone secretagogues are being used clinically in progressive settings to support tissue repair, immune modulation, and recovery. The conventional establishment tends to dismiss the entire category outright, largely because peptides don't fit neatly into the patentable blockbuster drug pipeline that funds most of mainstream medical research. That's not a scientific objection, that's a business model objection dressed up as scientific caution. Stem cell and exosome therapies are genuinely exciting for their regenerative potential, but this is also where the field gets murky and, frankly, a little embarrassing. There are clinics overseas, and some domestically operating in legal gray zones, selling unproven stem cell cocktails at a premium to desperate wealthy patients with more hope than due diligence. Not all stem cell therapy is snake oil, but a significant chunk of what's being marketed right now absolutely is, and you need a practitioner willing to tell you the difference instead of just taking your money. Plasma-based interventions, following on from the young blood parabiosis research in mice, generated a lot of buzz and a lot of overpromising. The actual human data doesn't support the dramatic claims that got splashed across headlines, and frankly, some of the commercial ventures selling young donor plasma to wealthy clients deserve every bit of scrutiny they've received. This is a great example of legitimate science getting hijacked by opportunists before the research was ever mature enough to support a commercial product. Here's the uncomfortable part. The reason Geroscience and rejuvenation therapies aren't standard of care yet isn't because the biology is unconvincing. It's because the regulatory and financial architecture of the medical industrial complex isn't built to approve or reimburse treat aging itself or regeneration as indications. Pharma needs a specific disease to target for a drug approval and a specific billing code for insurance to pay out. Aging as a root cause doesn't fit that mold, so instead we get 30 different drugs for 30 different downstream symptoms of the same upstream process, all separately patented, separately marketed, and separately billed. It's not a conspiracy in the tinfoil hat sense, it's just an incentive structure, and incentive structures are frighteningly good at shaping what gets called good medicine. If you're waiting for your primary care doctor to bring up senolytics or rapamycin at your next annual physical, you might be waiting a long time. Not because the evidence isn't accumulating, but because the system rewards treating diagnosed disease, not preventing the aging process that causes it. That's why a progressive root cause approach matters so much right now. Build your foundation using the 5 M's, microvascular, mitochondrial, metabolic balance, metabolic reserve, and membrane health through exercise, nutrition, and sleep. Before you even think about layering on advanced interventions like senolytics or peptide therapy, the fanciest rejuvenation protocol in the world can't outrun a sedentary lifestyle and a diet built on inflammation. Geroscience is arguably the most important shift in medicine in a generation. Just don't expect an industry built on managing chronic disease to hand you the tools to prevent it without a fight. Spoiler alert, the best way to fight aging is with prevention. Start as early as possible. Ideally, start in your 30s. Don't wait until you're 50 or 60. You can still make great strides, but starting sooner than later pays huge dividends, just like compounding interest. If you're ready to take back control of your health and your biological sovereignty, then give us a call at 9418-065-511.